In this video, we'll continue with our discussion of division of labor in honeybees. In the first video, we covered the basic nature of division of labor and gave an overview of how it works. In this video, we'll dive deeper into the behavior of each caste, from newly emerged bees to nurses to middle-aged bees to foragers. Let's get started. First of all, I should say that even this video is an overview of honeybee division of labor, despite the fact that we're going much deeper than last time. Multiple videos could be made on the behavior of each caste alone. So here I'll focus on the major roles played by each caste, but not so much on how they get their jobs done. In future videos, I will focus on the detailed behavior of each caste and how they all work together. Here is an overview of what the castes do and the common age ranges for each. Newly emerged bees are up first. The typical age range of these bees is 1 to 4 days of age. When a bee first emerges, her exoskeleton is still soft, and she cannot sting. Newly emerged bees are quite hairy as well. The bee on the screen is a newly emerged bee. If you find a frame of closed brood with many bees chewing their way out, you can usually see some of these bees standing around. Bees in this caste are incompletely developed, and they are mainly focused on completing their transition into adulthood. This means mainly eating pollen, staying warm in the brood zone, and standing around resting for the most part. The only work they do is cleaning cells, so sometimes they are also called cell cleaners. When a frame of closed brood starts to emerge, there are literally thousands of cells needing cleaning, by the way, so it's understandable that this is the first task bees do. Bees don't necessarily clean their own cell, by the way, even though people often say that. Again, there are thousands of cells needing cleaning, so they clean whatever cells are around when they're ready to do some work. A cell that a bee has just emerged from, by the way, is not ready for a queen to lay eggs in until it is cleaned. The cell from which a bee has just emerged has the old cocoon and other waste material in it, so this is a very important task. A clean cell has a shiny appearance that you can learn to recognize by holding the comb up at an angle so the sun reaches the bottom, basically the same angle you hold the comb up to see eggs. Next up are the nurses. The typical age range for this caste is 4 to 12 days, but there's lots of variation. Some bees transition to being middle-aged bees a little sooner and some later. Nurses are the first caste that really play an important role in the hive. Everyone knows that nurses care for the brood, but this is actually not the whole story. Nurses produce brood food, which is made from secretions from both the hypopharyngeal and mandibular glands. Brood food comes in two forms, royal jelly and worker jelly. The nurses feed worker jelly, which is similar to royal jelly, but different in many important ways that I'll cover in a future video, to worker brood, and royal jelly to the queen and to queen-destined larvae. But only half the brood food is actually fed to the brood. The other half is fed to adult workers. All the bees thus have the nurses as their source of protein and fat. So basically adults get their carbs from honey and nectar, but they get their protein and fat from nurses. Another important fact not known to most people about nurses is that they can keep producing brood food for quite a while after the pollen runs out, using stores of nutrients in their blood, which in insects is called hemolymph. Thus you might panic during a rainy spell when the hive has no more pollen, but the bees do not. Natural selection would never craft an animal that can't survive rainy spells, or dearths in general. But this is a tricky subject because during rainy spells, the hive does cannibalize young brood and slow down brood rearing. What bees do during periods of low pollen availability is thus complicated. I'll cover it in a future video, but the take-home message is that it's not a simple matter of no pollen right now so the brood will starve. Other than brood care, nurses do little other work. They work wax in the brood zone, which mostly means capping brood and trimming brood, and they help with thermoregulation, something all bees do, but that's about it. Let's move on to the middle-aged bees now. The typical age range for these bees is 12 to 21 days of age, but there's even more variation for this range than there is for their age range of nurses. Some bees start foraging at 15 days of age, for example, and some at 25, but most start around 21 days. Also, although the age at transition varies, a slightly younger than normal forager is a full forager. This is not true, however, for what are called precocious foragers, which means a forager that transitioned very early, usually due to stress in the hive, but I'll cover that in another video. The middle-aged bees do all the work in the nest other than brood care. Their two main jobs are processing food and building comb. With respect to comb building, it is the middle-aged bees that secrete wax and build new comb. They also repair damaged comb and do all the comb-related activities outside of the brood zone. It is the middle-aged bees that make honey. Foragers collect nectar, but they hand it over to the middle-aged bees once they get back to the nest. The middle-aged bees then ripen the nectar into honey and store it in the comb mostly at the top of the nest. Middle-aged bees also make bee bread. They mash up pollen pellets kicked into cells by pollen foragers and add some nectar and probably some enzymes as well. Middle-aged bees also act as guards, and they work with propolis in the nest. Undertakers, the bees who carry out dead bees, are also in this caste. Hygienic behavior, which can help control varroa mites, is also done by the middle-aged bees. And some middle-aged bees do most of the work in the nest. Last up are the foragers. Foragers collect 4 things: nectar, pollen, water, and propolis, which is just tree resin. They're usually collecting them in that order in terms of bulk, although on occasion they might briefly collect more pollen than nectar. In general, bees collect all the nectar they can, and just as much pollen, water, or propolis as they need at the moment. They are thus very different activities. You cannot look at the entrance, for example, and see a few pollen foragers and assume there is no pollen available out in the field. The bees might not just need pollen at the moment. In general, foragers do no work within the nest and focus on outdoor activity. The only within-nest task I think they do is thermoregulation on a very hot day. I also think it's mainly the foragers who sting at the entrance of the hive. Guards are very few in number, and I think their job is basically to alert the hive to an attack, not to do the majority of the actual fighting. There's some disagreement about this, however. Some bee scientists think that there are soldier bees who do most of the stinging, but the evidence for this is weak. I think what are sometimes called soldiers are just young foragers. Something interesting about foragers is that they sleep all night. All bees sleep, but the within-nest caste do it in an off-and-on way throughout the day. But foragers sleep all through the night. They thus have in common with us that they work all day and sleep most of the night. That's about it for the basics of division of labor. There are some other basic questions like flexibility in the caste system, which is associated with reverted nurses and accelerated or precocious foragers, but I'll handle those topics in a separate video since it's quite involved. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. See you next time.